He spent his entire life as a slave, dreaming of freedom. But the moment he finally became the master, something inside him began to change. Virginia, 1856. Not the kind of place where things changed quickly. Fields stretched for miles, tobacco, corn, and people who belonged to the land more than they belonged to themselves. Thomas had lived here his entire life. 18 years, long enough to understand the rules, but just young enough to still question them. He wasn't like the others. Everyone knew it. While boys his age worked the fields, Thomas worked inside the house, reading letters, balancing numbers, learning things he was never supposed to know. The old master had called it useful training, but Thomas understood something deeper. Knowledge was power, and power was the only thing that separated a man from property. When the master died, everything should have gone back to normal. That's how it always worked. But it didn't. Margaret stayed, young, alone, widowed, and completely unprepared for a world that expected her to fail. At first, she only needed help. Bring me the ledger. Explain this account. Why are we losing money here? Simple questions. But Thomas had answers. Better ones than anyone else. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. And something began to shift. She stopped giving orders. And started asking. He stopped lowering his eyes. And started meeting hers. At first, no one noticed. Then everyone did. He was eating inside the house. Wearing better clothes. Speaking like a man, instead of something owned. And Margaret was letting it happen. That's when the whispers started. Not loud. Never loud. But enough. Enough to spread. Enough to become dangerous. But none of that mattered. The day Thomas found the numbers. Hidden in the ledgers. Small at first. Easy to miss. Then bigger. And bigger. Until there was no denying it. Money. Disappearing. Not by accident. Not by mistake. But by someone who thought no one would ever look closely enough. Thomas stood there, staring at the pages, realizing something that changed everything. The plantation wasn't failing. It was being stolen. And the man behind it was family. That was the moment. Everything stopped being simple. Because now, Thomas wasn't just a slave who could read. He was the only person who could save everything. And Margaret knew it. It meant, for the first time in his life, Thomas wasn't just useful. He was necessary. And in a world like this, being necessary was the most dangerous thing a man could become. Freedom didn't come like Thomas imagined. It didn't feel like breaking chains. It felt quiet. Philadelphia, a place where no one knew his name. No one called him boy. No one told him where to stand, or how to breathe. The day the papers were signed, it was done. Just like that. Thomas was no longer a slave. No ceremony, no moment. Just ink on paper, and a life that no longer belonged to anyone else. But freedom came with something he didn't expect. Choice. What to say, what to do, where to look. And for the first time, he didn't know the answers. Margaret spoke differently now. Not above him. Not to him. But, with him. Thomas. Not a command. A name. At first, he didn't know how to respond. Didn't know where to stand. Didn't know if he was allowed to sit. Or if he should still wait to be told. Because the body doesn't forget that easily. Even when the law says it should. 2 months later, they returned. Virginia. The same land. But nothing was the same. This time, Thomas didn't walk behind her. He walked in front. And when people asked his name, he answered, T. Whitmore, a businessman. From the north. That's what they saw. That's what they believed. Because the truth was something they weren't ready for. The plantation was no longer Margaret's. On paper, it belonged to him. Every field, every building, every person. Thomas stood there, looking out over the land, and felt something he had never felt before. Not fear, not anger, but wait. Because now, the lines were gone. No master, no slave, just him, standing where the master used to stand. And for the first time, Thomas understood something no one had ever explained to him. Power doesn't feel like strength. It feels like responsibility you never asked for. The others watched him, careful, quiet, waiting, not sure what he would become, because they had seen this before. Not him, but the position. And that position changed people. Inside the house, things were even stranger. Margaret called him Mr. Whitmore, only when others were around. But when they were alone, Thomas, the way she said it, it wasn't ownership, but it wasn't simple either. Because now, they were something else. Not master and slave. Not equal. Something in between. Something dangerous. At night, Thomas would sit alone, in the room that used to belong to the overseer. Not sleeping. Not thinking. Just feeling it. The silence. The space. The absence of commands. And underneath all of that, something new. Something he didn't recognize yet. But it was there. Growing. Because freedom didn't erase what had been done to him, it just gave him a different place to stand. And from that place, he could feel it clearly. The same system that had once owned him was now in his hands. And the question was no longer how to survive it, but what kind of man he would become inside it. At first, Thomas told himself nothing had changed. The books were cleaner, the numbers were stable. The land was finally running the way it should. And the people were still working, just like before. That was the part he didn't say out loud. Because the truth was, nothing had changed for them. Same fields, same sun, same silence. Only difference was who stood at the top. And now, that person was him. The first time someone called him, "Sir," he didn't answer. Not because he didn't hear it, but because something inside him refused to accept it. Sir. It sounded wrong, like a word that didn't belong to him. But the second time, he turned. And that was enough. Because power doesn't arrive all at once. It slips in, quietly, in small moments, in decisions that feel harmless. Like the day his mother came to him, not as his mother, but as one of the workers. She stood at the door, head slightly lowered, hands still, waiting, the same way she had always stood, in front of others. Thomas. She stopped herself, corrected it. Sir. That word cut deeper than any chain ever had. He looked at her, really looked. And for a moment, he saw both versions at once. The woman who raised him. And the person who now had to ask permission to speak. You don't have to do that, he said quietly. But she didn't move. Didn't lift her head. Didn't change her voice. Rules are rules. That's when he realized, this wasn't about him. It was bigger than him. Bigger than her. Bigger than anyone standing in that room. The system didn't care who held the power. Only that someone did. That night, Thomas couldn't sit still. He walked the house, room to room, trying to shake something off. But it followed him. The feeling that every decision he made was shaping something. Something he didn't fully understand yet. A few days later, it happened again. Two workers, arguing. Nothing serious. Just tension. But all eyes turned to him. Waiting. Waiting for judgment. For consequence. For authority. And in that moment, Thomas felt it. The expectation. The weight. The invisible pressure, to become what they believed he already was. He could let it go. Or he could enforce order. Just like every master before him. And without thinking, he made a choice. Enough. The word came out. Firm. Controlled. Different. Not the voice of someone surviving. But someone in charge. The argument stopped instantly. Heads lowered. Bodies stilled. Just like that. And for a second, Thomas felt something dangerous. Not guilt, not fear, but control. Clean, simple, effective. And that's when it hit him. This system worked. Not because it was right, but because it was easy. And if he wasn't careful, it wouldn't just stay around him. It would start growing inside him. Because the hardest part wasn't escaping slavery. It was making sure you didn't become it. It happened at night. The kind of night where everything felt like it was holding its breath. Sir, the word hit differently now. Urgent. Sharp. There's been a run. Thomas didn't move at first. Not because he didn't understand, but because he did. Run. Escape. The one thing no one was supposed to even try anymore. It's Hannah. That name landed heavier than the rest. Hannah. 17. Quiet. The kind of person who never drew attention, never caused problems, never gave anyone a reason to watch her. And yet, she ran. They found her near the river. Didn't make it far. No one ever did. Now she stood outside, held, waiting. Thomas stepped onto the porch. Lantern light flickered across faces. Men. Workers. Eyes watching. Not just her. Him. Because this moment wasn't about Hannah anymore. It was about him. What kind of master he would be. Hannah stood still. Mud on her dress. Breath uneven. But her eyes, steady. Not begging. Not crying. Just waiting. Waiting for judgment. Thomas felt it again. That pressure. The same one from before. But stronger now. Sharper. Demanding something from him. This is how it works. That voice wasn't outside, it was inside. Built from everything he had seen, everything he had lived. Punish her. Make an example. Keep order. That's what every man before him would do, that's what the system expected. Thomas took a step forward. All eyes locked on him, waiting. And for a moment, he almost did it. Almost became exactly what this place needed him to be. Then, he saw something. Not her. Himself. Years ago. Standing in the same place. Same fear. Same silence. And just like that, the illusion broke. No. The word came out low. But it carried. What? No punishment. Now louder. Clear. The men exchanged looks. Confusion. Disbelief. That ain't how this works, sir. Thomas turned. Slow. It does now. That sentence changed everything. Not loudly, not instantly, but permanently. Let her go. No hesitation this time, no doubt. Just decision. Hannah didn't move at first, like she didn't believe it. Like no one ever had a reason to. Then slowly, she stepped back. Free. The men didn't argue again. Because something had shifted. Not just in the moment, but in him. And they could feel it. This wasn't weakness. It wasn't kindness. It was something else. Something far more dangerous. To the world they understood. For the first time, Thomas hadn't followed the system. He had broken it. And once something breaks like that, it never goes back the same. They didn't stay long after that. Not because they couldn't, but because they understood. Something had already changed. Virginia was no longer just a place. It was a system. And once Thomas broke it, there was no way to keep living inside it. The papers were signed. Quietly. Ownership transferred. Land sold. And just like that, the plantation was no longer his. For the second time in his life, Thomas walked away from it all. But this time, he wasn't escaping. He was choosing. California. A place where no one asked too many questions. Where a man's past could disappear if he worked hard enough. They built something new there. Not grand, not perfect, but real. A house. A business. A life that didn't depend on owning anyone else. Hannah stayed. Not as property, not as something owed, but as someone who chose to. And for the first time, Thomas saw what that meant. Choice. Not forced. Not taken. Given. Years passed. The past didn't follow them loudly. No chains. No orders. No overseers. But it never fully disappeared. Sometimes, in quiet moments, Thomas would stop, look at his hands, and remember what they once represented, what they once held, and what they almost became. Because the truth was, he didn't escape slavery the day he was freed. He escaped it the day he chose not to become it. Some men survive the system. Some men fight it. But the rare ones walk away from it even when it's finally theirs. And that is what made Thomas different. Not the freedom he was given, but the power he refused to keep.